The scale, the just massive systemic corruption that we see in Trump 2 is different than we've ever witnessed.
Right.
To the point now where he's overtly taking aircrafts worth hundreds of millions of dollars and using $1 billion of taxpayer money to make them compliant with the security needs of a president, and then keeping the plane when he's done.
After he's done, he keeps the plane.
Keeps the plane, it goes to his museum, but it's there for his use. And then you've got all the crypto deals, the meme coin dinners, the licensing stuff, the stock transactions that are taking place. You've got him promoting certain stocks that he's just bought with market influencing statements and actions.
When the people who wrote the Constitution sat down to design the presidency, they were worried about one thing above almost everything else: that someone would use public power to get rich. They just fought a war to get out from under a king who treated the country like his own personal property. The whole point of what they built was to make sure that could never happen here again. So they wrote it into the document, an oath of office. A clause says the president can't take payments from foreign governments. 3 separate branches, each able to check the others. Those guardrails only work if someone enforces them. And right now, the branch that's supposed to be doing the enforcing, a Congress run by Republicans who won't cross the president, is looking the other way while he uses the office to enrich himself. I'm Scott Peters. I represent San Diego in Congress, and this is 72 and Sunny, where we have the conversations that actually matter about issues shaping our region and our country. If you like what you hear, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. My guest today is my friend, Senator Adam Schiff. He was a federal prosecutor before he ever ran for office. He chaired the House Intelligence Committee, served as lead impeachment manager, sat on the January 6th committee, and wrote the Protecting Our Democracy Act. Nobody has spent more time on the question we're going to dig into today: what happens when a president ignores the rules, and what can a co-equal Congress still do about it? Adam, welcome. Thanks for coming.
You bet. Great to be with you.
Really nice to see you. I wanted to start with a little bit about what we're seeing. There's so many people are cynical about what's happening, and they think all politicians cut corners or even are corrupt. But we looked at what this president has been involved in, and maybe you could tell me why this is different. The New York Times estimated at least $1.4 billion in personal profit from the presidency in a single year. He's in crypto ventures. He's got a $400 million jet from a foreign government, Qatar. You see him settling these cases against, he files personally, he gets personal money from corporations that do business with the government. And I just recently saw he disclosed roughly $700 million in stock trades in just the first 3 months of this year. And you hear a lot about congressional stock trading, but that's more than all of Congress traded in the entire previous year. So I want to get your perspective on this. You know, you've seen a lot of white-collar crime in your day, and you're very familiar with governmental systems. Why should we be concerned about this? What should the average voter know about why this is different and why we should be worried?
Well, this is different in so many ways. It's different even from the first Trump administration because the scale, the just massive systemic corruption that we see in Trump 2 is different than we've ever witnessed. And there have always been presidential scandals, and there have been concerns about first families, right, going back to Billy Carter, if you remember that name, yeah. And it became sort of a joke about presidential families. There were obviously allegations involving Hunter Biden and concerns about whether family members are trafficking on the name of their parent, the president, right, yeah, or right, brother or whatever. This is different. And different, as I said, even from the Trump administration part 1. In part 1, you might remember, at the beginning, he made some pretense of wanting to wall off, put in a blind trust, his holdings, his assets. Mm-hmm. He did a press conference where there were all these stacks of paper. Right. Of course, there was no indication of what those papers were. It was a bit of a show without much substance behind it. But at least there was a pretense of an effort to avoid just pure profiteering off the presidency. Mm-hmm. That's gone. Right. To the point now where he's overtly taking aircrafts worth hundreds of millions of dollars and using $1 billion of taxpayer money to make them compliant with the security needs of a president, and then keeping the plane when he's done.
After he's done, he keeps the plane.
Keeps the plane, it goes to his museum, but it's there for his use. Yeah. And then you've got all the crypto deals, the meme coin dinners, the licensing stuff, the stock transactions that are taking place. You've got him promoting certain stocks that he's just bought,
Right.
with market influencing statements and actions. You have him suing media outlets and extorting payments. If you want your $8 billion merger to go forward, then you need to pay me $16 million in cash.
Right.
Over a lawsuit everybody acknowledges is bogus. So the scale of it is breathtaking. I think a big difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2 has to do with a guy named John Roberts and a decision
Okay.
of the Roberts Court to give the president immunity. So this president now knows, unlike the first term, that he can grift and graft and he will not be held accountable.
Well, so that's interesting because there was a distinction about what was an official act and not an official act. So ostensibly the executive could still be liable for things that weren't done in the course of his duties as president. You think all this is considered in the course of his duties as president?
That would certainly be their argument.
Yeah.
And the opinion, the Supreme Court opinion that broke it down along really three lines. One was core responsibilities of the president, the Justice Department, the military,
right.
absolute immunity.
Right.
Areas that are outside the core but still official, qualified immunity, purely personal, the only thing he's exposed to. But when you're president for 24 hours a day, what is purely personal? Because everything you do of necessity goes through your staff. So the president buys stock in Dell, and then he makes a statement while touring a factory, or he pushes out on social media, everybody should buy a Dell computer.
Right.
Dell computers are the greatest.
Stock goes
Well,
up.
his statements are through official channels.
yeah.
His visit to Dell is an official visit, or visit somewhere else that he's just bought stock in. Or he makes a decision after buying stock in NVIDIA to allow NVIDIA to export a quality of chip to China that our national security experts say could compromise our security and give China a leg up in the race for AI. Still, they would argue that's an official act to allow the U.S. export of these chips. Very hard to prove when you're talking about a president something purely personal. I think that's a big part of what's driving this. They just feel they can grab whatever they can grab while the getting is good.
They feel like they're absolutely immune, right?
Yeah.
You know, in another world, if you ask, so sometimes I think the test is, what would Republicans say if President Obama had done something like this? His biggest scandal was wearing a tan suit, I think. He was completely clean from this.
Well,
but I mean, what would they say if President Biden had done this? I mean,
Oh, they attacked Hunter Biden because he was selling his paintings for more than people thought they were worth.
right. And he got on a corporate board,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
But-
But you compare that to World Liberty Financial,
Right. Yeah.
in which Binance, which is charged with, convicted of, I think it was something like thousands of transactions, many of which benefiting Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Binance, their CEO is convicted, goes to jail, and Binance buys or utilizes $2 billion in World Liberty Financial coin in a transaction,
Right.
and suddenly the CEO is pardoned.
Yeah. So,
Can I say one other thing about
yeah,
it though?
yeah.
Because I think this is really important. Obviously, we should want no corruption in the government
Right.
for its own sake. But there's a cost to the public of all of this. When a merger goes through, not because it's in the best interest of consumers, but because the president got paid $16 million by one of the entertainment companies, that means that there are going to be thousands of jobs that are lost as a result of the merger. It means that we may have fewer choices in what we watch. It may mean that we pay more for our streaming services. There's a cost to
Right.
that. When they pardon fraudsters, there's a cost to that because in addition to relieving them of the obligation to make restitution, they go on and commit other frauds.
right.
We end up paying the price for this kind of grift and graft.
You know, it does strike me that the founders set up a system of checks and balances and that Congress was supposed to watch this. There's two watchdogs that aren't watching. One is the Justice Department. You were a U.S. attorney, you were a prosecutor in that. And one of the most coveted jobs, I think, as a young lawyer can get is an assistant U.S. attorney job, one you had. And they can't fill them now because of what's happening to the Justice Department. And then Congress. I mean, boy, if President Obama had done anything close to this, the Republicans would have been all over it. That's just not happening at all here. So why don't you tell me a little bit about like the breakdown in the Justice Department, how it differs from what you're used to, what you saw, which apparently, sadly, was based just on norms, people doing the right thing. And then if you're shocked at what's happening with the Republicans in Congress, it's amazes me.
So I was an assistant U.S. attorney in Los Angeles for almost 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know or see any change going from a Democratic president to a Republican president.
Right.
There may have been some very broad differences in priorities. We may have spent more time under a Republican president prosecuting immigration smuggling cases or drug smuggling than under a Democratic president that might have had a priority on going after white-collar crime. But apart from very general priorities, you would never be told to go forward with a case or not go forward with a case because the president wants it done.
Right.
The president, by his own admission the other day at a rally, you may have seen this, was saying that he called a U.S. attorney in California and told them to look into election fraud in California because he said the Republican candidate for governor in California, Hilton, was behind or falling behind. He might not make the top two, and therefore it must be fraudulent.
Right.
And all of a sudden, when he asked this U.S. attorney to look into it, then suddenly the results changed and Hilton made the runoff. But for Donald Trump, he would not have made the runoff. Now, of course, that's all lies.
Right.
But the idea that you would call a U.S. attorney to look into something completely fabricated, or that you would call a U.S. attorney or ask your attorney general to go after a political enemy or opponent, was unthinkable in the past. You certainly have to go back to Nixon to find anything even remotely like it. I think for me, the first dramatic proof that the Justice Department was no longer in the justice business involved the former mayor of New York, Eric Adams. This, to me, and I think a lot of federal prosecutors, was the most striking thing, way beyond norms, just unthinkable, unimaginable in the past. You've got a mayor of a major American city indicted for serious corruption, and the Justice Department moves to dismiss the case against the mayor because the mayor is useful on an unrelated policy matter,
right.
Immigration.
Immigration, right, yeah.
And there's a lot to be disturbed about in what we see, but we should also not ignore the profiles and courage that are out there that give us hope for the future. And one for me is a guy in the Southern District of New York, conservative lawyer, Federalist Society, clerk for, I think it was Alito in the Supreme Court, impeccable conservative credentials. They ask him to dismiss this case against Eric Adams. He writes back to the Justice Department that he is not going to do it. And he says, I'm sure you can find some coward or some fool to do this, but it was never going to be me. And that kind of willingness to stand up gives me a lot of confidence and hope in the future.
Right. And then what about Congress sort of sitting by and watching this? And when Speaker Johnson, when he hears about something like this, he says, when he's asked about something like this, he says, I haven't heard about it yet. Everything he can do to avoid talking about it. They would never put up with this from a Democrat, right?
No, and I continue to come back to something Speaker Johnson said recently when he was asked about the president's attacks on California in our elections. And he repeated the false claims of election fraud in California. And the reporter said, what's your proof of this? And he said, well, this is diabolical. And it's so far upstream that I can't point to the proof, but what other possible explanation could there be? Now, Johnson's no fool.
Right.
He understands this is totally baseless, but he's a perfect illustration of the problem in the House and the Senate. And that is, if top leadership and all the members, frankly, are willing to speak things they know are plainly not true in the service of their party or the president of their party, none of it works. Right. You can have the best written constitution in the world, and I think we do. And it's not enough if people don't give meaning to their oath of office, if they are unwilling to accept plain facts, if they're not willing to distinguish between right and wrong. None of it is enough.
The thing is, a lot of it's based on honor. And when you break down that honor, I don't think it just snaps back to where it was when Trump's gone. I think a lot of the whole system is debased. I don't think, I mean, as a member of Congress, I think it's going to be difficult for people not to retaliate in kind, rather than sort of come back to what the norms that have served us for 250 years. The Justice Department has to be repaired. I imagine some of these norms have to be written down now. Do you think, or how do we get the Justice Department back to the kind of trustworthy institution that it's always been?
I think the Justice Department of the many departments is going to be among the most difficult to repair.
Right.
Because you're absolutely right. Once the public has lost confidence in an institution, very hard to rebuild. USAID, which has been basically closed, we've seen devastating impacts from that. Thousands and thousands of people have lost their lives. The president in his supplemental request is now asking for billions of dollars to fight Ebola.
Right.
Had we had a more active USAID, that might not have been necessary. But we can restore USAID. We'll still have to deal with the lingering skepticism of countries around the world that the next administration may do away with U.S. development assistance in the future. But how do you rebuild confidence in a department once it's been shattered? In the future, if there's a prosecution of a corrupt public official, of course that official is going to make the argument that Trump makes now, that it's all political and it's a hoax and it's a sham and all the rest of that. And how's the public to divine whether that's true or not true once that confidence has been shattered? So it is going to take us a long time to come back. I do think we do come back. I think we can restore confidence in our institutions, but it's going to be a long process.
Well, you're part of that, and as we would expect from you, you're leading the Protecting Our Democracy Act and some other bills to try to get us back on course. I hope that they can pass this term, but at least they're going to start a conversation about where we need to go. Why don't you tell us about some of the legislative efforts that you're leading?
In Trump 1, I talked to the Speaker about developing our own post-Watergate reforms. In the same way, after Watergate, the Congress enacted a whole series of laws, campaign finance reforms and controls on the intelligence community, basically establishing a wall between the White House and the Justice Department to wall off the Justice Department from presidential interference and dictating what cases the department should prosecute. That we need to do that again. And we wrote this bill, the Protecting Our Democracy Act, which we got passed in the House. We couldn't get it passed in the Senate. It was a cataloging of all the guardrails that had come down during the first Trump administration.
That was the Democratic House that passed it.
Yes,
back
it
then.
was.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah.
We'll need to do that again, except we'll need to expand it to
Right.
take into account a whole lot of other things. For example, how do you enforce the clear language of the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause, that says you can't take gifts from foreign powers? If you can take a $400 million aircraft, well, that constitutional provision is pretty moot.
Yeah, that's a big exception.
It is, and
Right.
The problem is that because this was part of the Constitution, and because there was probably a Congress that was willing to really make sure there were consequences for a president that violated those provisions, those norms weren't violated.
Right.
And now we actually are going to need to establish who has the standing to bring an action.
I was saying that too. You and I will keep working on this in this building, and I'm glad you're here. What would you tell folks who want to do something about it? What can they do? I mean, it's got to be. I know it's very frustrating. People are sad and angry about what they see here, and particularly a lot about this corruption. All this money going into Trump's pocket while everyone's really struggling to pay their own bills. What do you tell the average American? What would you say to people in San Diego and in California that they can do to fight back against this?
I think being involved, and it can be in a variety of different ways. There are lots of organizations trying to address some of the problems we have today. People don't have to reinvent the wheel. So those that are concerned about the environment, for example, concerned about new proposals to have offshore drilling off the coast of California, or what we're doing to the planet, there are lots of great environmental organizations to plug into, and they can be involved in campaigns to move Congress in a particular direction, or to get involved with elections, and for candidates that are pro-environment. Others who are lawyers can get involved in making sure that there's no interference in the elections at the polling places and people's voting rights are observed. There's no one perfect organization or action to take. What I suggest to people is pursue what you're most interested and passionate about. If it's the environment, get involved in an environmental group. If it's guns and gun safety, there are lots of great groups working on that issue. The worst thing, though, is to do nothing and to feel powerless about everything that's going on.
Right.
So getting involved is also really good for you. But let me ask you a question. What do you tell to people who are really despondent over the state of the country? What do you tell them to give them hope and optimism about the future?
Well, I do think there's a call to action aspect of this. I mean, I think that no one's entitled to this democracy. People have fought for it for literally hundreds of years. People have died for it, and now we're in a moment where this is our fight. And so I want people to be engaged. I think it's worth fighting for. And I'm really proud to be an American. I'm proud of this, probably the most important democracy maybe in the history of the world. We've accomplished a lot. People get to say these things because they're in America. And so I think we have a lot of freedoms and opportunity and a future that we need to fight for. But I think, it doesn't happen if you just watch it happen. I mean, it doesn't change if you just watch it happen.
Right. I think that's absolutely right. Let me ask you one other question. One of the things I like about the Senate is...
6-year term?
Well, yes. There are actually many things I like about the Senate. That's one of them. I also love representing the whole amazing, magnificent state. But it is easier to get things done by seeking out a Republican and finding, okay, we may disagree on these other things, but you and I both have an interest in this particular issue. I found a colleague from Mississippi who had the same problem with rural hospitals shutting down in her state. We teamed up together in legislation, and we were able to get something passed that would keep some hospitals open that would close otherwise. You have a real track record in the House, the more difficult environment, the more partisan environment of getting stuff done and delivering. At the same time, you're fighting against the administration when you need to. What's your secret to your incredible productivity in the House?
Well, I appreciate that. That's the thing. I did a little bit of math at the beginning. I'm not an engineer, but I understood this. You need 218 votes in the House. You need a presidential signature, and you need 60 votes in the Senate, as you know. And that's never just going to be one party. And the other thing I noticed was that the stuff that we do with one party or the other is never that durable. It becomes the political target for the next campaign. So you have to have bipartisan buy-in, and that's just always what I've tried to do. It is hard. We said, there's only 100 of you. There's 435 of us. It's sometimes hard to find the right person, but it's exactly that. You find someone where you might disagree with everything. They want to get their picture taken with Trump, but here's something we can agree on, whether it's land management or forestry or energy or the budget. And so I think that's really the magic here. I think that's what makes it interesting. If you wanted someone to come yell at Trump, there's plenty of people that could do that. But I do that, but I think we come here to get stuff done. And I want to thank you too, by the way, as we close, that I told you when you ran for Senate that we haven't had a lot of senators. Sometimes senators don't pay attention to San Diego, and you've really done a wonderful job for us, starting with the Tijuana River Valley, but learning about the challenges of housing prices in San Diego and the whole city and the region. And so I just want to thank you for that, the attention you've given us, and you've always been really responsive to me. I'm glad you're my senator and my friend.
Well, thank you very much. I have been enjoying all my time in San Diego. My wife is from Del Mar.
I know,
so I love
she's
it
from
down
Del Mar,
there.
right? She's a native.
And I will be there for July 4th weekend. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, we see you then. Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate it. That's our conversation with Senator Adam Schiff. My thanks to him for the time and for a clear-eyed look at what's at stake and what we can still do about it. Before we go, we're going to do something we do every episode. We set aside a few minutes for the questions our listeners send in, the ones that come straight from the community we serve, about what we're dealing with back home. So let's get to them. A constituent from Coronado asked, how can we improve the transition from active duty service to civilian life? This comes up a lot in San Diego, where we have about 15,000 people transition out of the military every year. About a third of them want to stay in San Diego. A while back, we started a volunteer program called 0800, and the idea was for leaders from the community be able to come onto the base before you transition out to give you some introduction to what you might be looking at when you come out, and maybe hook you up with employment opportunities at the beginning before you even you're discharged. And so that's one way. But in Congress, we spend a lot of time making sure that folks get the support that they need, whether it's transitioning to employment or education with the GI Bill. We want to make sure you get your health care. We want to make sure that the VA is healthy and that you have the support you need. And we want to make sure that veterans' benefits are secure. One of the issues we've had is with, a lot of veterans do great. They know how to show up on time. They're part of a team. They know how to solve problems. That makes a great employee. That makes a great citizen for San Diego. Some fall in hard times. They're a larger percentage of our homeless population than in other areas, and we want to make sure that they get the supportive housing from the federal government that Trump once tried to cut, we are able to keep. So there's a lot of aspects to supporting veterans in San Diego, from employment through retirement, and obviously that's a big focus in a town where the military is such a big part of our economy and our culture. Sam from Escondido says, what reforms can we make to the 340B program to help people afford their prescriptions? Okay, so 340B, Sam, you're the only one on this podcast who knows what that is, but we're doing a bill on it. The program is designed to give lower drug prices to particular populations in the healthcare system. So poor folks and folks afflicted with AIDS are supposed to get a break using the 340B program for their drug prices, and that's great. The problem is that this has been the fastest growing program, and there's a lot of money going into it that's really not getting to the patients that are intended to get it. So we need to make some reforms. We've even seen some fraud in some places where the money is siphoned off to people who obviously is not intended for. Hospitals rely on this money for their solvency. We want to be sensitive to that, but we do want to make sure that we identify patient to patient, prescription by prescription, where this money is going, because what happens if the program is too bloated and the costs are excessive is that your insurance rates go up because they have to cover that. So we're going to do some work to produce a bill this month, a 340B reform bill that's going to tighten this program up, make sure that the money still flows, but it flows to the people, the disadvantaged people who it was intended for. And keep an eye on that, Sam. We can talk really nerdy about it when we issue the bill. Glenn from San Diego says, how can we accelerate small nuclear plants to provide energy? I appreciate your all types of energy support, but would prefer a way around coal. I totally agree about coal. I think the good news in the United States is coal has been outcompeted by natural gas with fracking technology. It's so cheap. And that's a good thing because coal is extremely dirty. It generates a lot of CO2, but also a lot of particulate matter, the stuff that causes asthma, and heavy metals that really are toxic and bioaccumulate in fish. We can do a lot better than coal. One answer is nuclear. I would say the good news is that in this Congress, there's virtually unanimous support that we need to get back into nuclear development. It's clean, baseload power, it's reliable, it runs all the time, and generates no carbon pollution. And we found many ways to do it safe. What Glenn's referring to is small modular reactors. You're familiar with the big ones we see up at San Onofre along the coast. The new technology could be much smaller, even mobile, and we would like maybe to deploy it a lot faster. The problem is that we're sort of restarting this industry in the United States after it lay dormant for a long time, and so the startup costs are high. The government, the Department of Energy, has a loan programs office that can help finance the first few to get them off the ground. But then I think it's going to be a real opportunity for us to power up the country, and none too soon, because, as I've spoken before, we're going to see a huge increase in demand for electricity like we haven't seen in decades. And if we don't keep up with the supply, the prices are going to go way up. So this is an affordability issue as well as an environmental and power issue. And so we'll be all over that, I hope, Glenn, and have good news for you within the next 4 to 5 years, I hope. Here's what I hope you're taking away from today's episode. First, the rules against using public office for private gain are not partisan. They were written into the Constitution by people who understood exactly this temptation: the oath, the emoluments clauses, 3 branches that check each other. Second, those guardrails only work if someone enforces them. The record here is documented and it's large, at least $1.4 billion by the New York Times accounting, and that's a floor. And it's happening while families pay more for groceries and electricity. Congress is supposed to be the check. Right now, the Republicans who run it, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, are choosing not to be, and a Congress that won't hold any president accountable has stopped doing the job the Constitution built it to do. Third, this is solvable. There's a bill, the Restore Trust in Government Act, that would ban individual stock trading for all of us, including me and my family. I've signed the petition to force a vote on that bill, and the courts can enforce the emoluments clauses. Congress can use its oversight and its power of the purse. The design works if we insist that it work. And here's my ask. Whoever your representative is, whatever their party, tell them you want a real stock trading ban and you want real guardrails enforced no matter who's in the White House. Not one side's rules, the Constitution's rules. We're recording this around the 4th of July, and people forget that the Declaration of Independence is mostly a list of grievances against a king who acted like he was above the law. And the whole point of what came after was to make sure no one, however powerful, gets to put themselves above the law again. That idea is the entire experiment. Keeping it alive is everyone's job, not just Congress's. And to me, that's the most patriotic thing there is. I'm Scott Peters. This is 72 and Sunny. I'll see you next time.